course, it goes without saying that Black and Indigenous and economically marginalized people bear the brunt of these storms and face the heaviest costs when they have to rebuild year after year after year after year after year. So, I was really dissatisfied with the way that my state was handling the climate crisis, so I decided I would come to school here in Massachusetts to see if I could learn how to make change. And this was exciting for me, and I thought, perhaps naively, that in the solid blue state of Massachusetts, I would see progressive climate policy, an urgency to act, and a centering of those who are most affected by the climate crisis. Hello. Unfortunately, though, despite my optimism, I quickly saw that the same institutional racism and settler colonialism, the same hesitancy to act, and the same empty neoliberalism that also troubles Louisiana also plagues this state. I saw that Harvard, one of the wealthiest and most acclaimed institutions in the world, refused to divest its $42 billion, that's billion with a B, dollar endowment from the fossil fuel industry. I saw that politicians were slow to act and slow to believe that the people who were most affected by this climate crisis needed their help. And just recently, we saw that Massachusetts, also a coastal state, is now vulnerable to the same kinds of tropical storms and hurricanes that trouble my home. Right. That's right. And when I think about all these things, I'm really mad. In fact, I'm really, really mad. But it's not because all hope is lost, and it's not because these communities will never recover, because none of those things are true, but because there are direct ways that this devastation can be undone, and people in power are not doing enough about it. I just want to be clear, though, all hope is not lost. In the past 2 weeks, both Harvard and Boston University committed to divesting from fossil fuels. Which is an incredible victory, not only for the climate movement, but also for student activism. And that's why, in that spirit, we, as students, as young people and allies, have an unbelievable stake in our future and our planet. And that's why here today, we are here as a coalition to demand that the people in power in this state can do more and do better. For this reason, it's time to call out the Massachusetts state legislature to act. I am calling them, we are all calling them, to stop this state's collision course with the climate damage, to stop tabling discussions about climate change for a later date, because that day is now. There are tangible ways that the state legislature can work to halt the climate crisis and protect those most vulnerable communities. There are so many pieces of legislation before them right now, like House Bill 2230 to improve air quality, Senate Bill 2170 to set renewable energy targets, House Bill 614 to develop a climate education curriculum, and so many more. There are so many. Just like the tides are rising, the people are rising, and so is our generation. Those gilded walls over there cannot keep out our voices or our demands for climate change, or for change. That's right. We are here, and we will not rest till the state legislature, till the governor's office, till all other bodies in power hold themselves accountable and react to the climate crisis and commit themselves to a just and sustainable future. Yeah. We will not rest until they uplift and protect Black lives, Indigenous lives, LGBTQ+ lives, and the economically disenfranchised. Just like back home in my state, everyone comes together to weather these terrible storms. It is so encouraging and amazing that we are all here now. We must continue to stand together to keep these bodies accountable and unite to tell Massachusetts state officials that they must act before it's too late and before our extractive capitalist system leaves us all to perish. Thank you.
Reggie brings a racial and social justice lens to the climate movement. Since January of 2020, Reggie has organized for the North American Indian Center of Boston on awareness campaigns, civic engagement, and connects the community world to a wide range of resources. Reggie supports NICOB's work in bringing environmental justice to Indigenous communities. We are so thrilled to have them with us. Everyone give Reggie a round of applause.
Hi, besties. Shout out to the people who helped me chant lead as we were walking over. Anyway, Good afternoon. My name's Reggie Alkavich. I am the Civic Engagement Coordinator for the North American Indian Center of Boston. And I would like to take a moment of silence to honor the Massachusetts land we stand on, and the descendants at Ponkapoag who carried on those traditions and land stewardship. Indigenous people across Turtle Island have been defending our precious land from those who see it as a simple commodity. Our land has never been a commodity, it has always been a partner. You look at the news lately and you see a new and concerning climate crisis. In the Spanish Canary Islands, there is an active volcano erupting, but the airport is still open for tourists. If you think about the past year, we're the ones who started pushing the conversation. We're the ones who will continue to do so. We're the ones who started this whole Fridays for the Future event. We're the ones who started the Fight for 15, Standing Rock, Me Too, March for Our Lives, mutual aid efforts, and many more. Efforts like the Indigenous Legislative Agenda bills. 1, to ban Native face mascots in public schools. 2, to support Native children in those schools. 3, to permanently change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Thankfully, it's a change that my own high school has implemented. Go Amers. 4, to help save our Native heritage sites here in the Commonwealth. And then 5, to create an accurate Native history course throughout all of the grades. But it's not just the Indigenous legislative agenda that we need to support. We also have environmental justice at the State House. We have an Access for Justice bill which will support all civil rights offenses that don't always get covered by federal law. A sitting reform which will inform impacted communities about the pros and cons of new construction in the neighborhood, and an air quality bill for all of our communities who are impacted by the highways that are so dangerously placed nearby their houses. And we know what we need to do. We know that we need to change. We know that the ones here, all of us, coming into power are going to shake everything up, just like we already have and will continue to do so. And so moments like this give me hope that we're going to keep pushing that agenda. So thank you for all of those who left school to be here, and thank you to everyone who supported the young people who are here.
What do we do? Stand up, fight back! Stop line 3!
Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! We're gonna take Columbus Day down, city by city, town by town. We're gonna take Columbus Day down, city by city, town by town. We're gonna take Columbus Day down.
Our next speaker is Danya Halak. She is a sophomore at Amherst College and a Syrian refugee. In 2020, she delivered a TED Talk on her memories from the Syrian civil war and her realization that the factors that displaced her family were caused by climate change. She continues to mobilize for climate justice from a global perspective that connects the conflict caused by climate change to the local sea level rise impacts on her new home in Revere, Massachusetts. She's a graduate of the Our Climate Fellowship. Everyone give it up for Danya!
Hello, can you hear me well? Okay. Yeah. Wow, let's go. Hello, Boston. How are we doing today? I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you all for coming out on this very roller coaster of a day. It was raining this morning. It's gonna rain in like an hour. Good luck getting home. Please get home safe. I hope we're all enjoying getting wet because this seems to be a trend. I don't know if anybody noticed, but like how this summer has been like pretty much, I don't know, 90% like rain. That's raining in July. Anyways, so just like how unexpected this rainy summer was, I didn't really expect to be here today. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Danya Halak. As mentioned, I am currently a sophomore at Amherst College. I am a resident of Revere, and I am a proud Syrian immigrant. And a couple years ago, I was just living in Syria, just a normal student, and one of my dreams were just to study science and do research at my local university in Syria. It's called Aleppo University, if anybody have heard of it. It's okay, no, don't worry about it. So as you can tell, I was born in Aleppo, Syria. I was raised there my whole life. I lived there my whole life. pretty much like maybe like the best years of my life were there. I loved it. And that was until the war that ensued threatened to take everything away from me. I remember running through the living room right when I came back home, and the building started to shake. I had just gone home from school. I wanted to tell my mom all about my day. And I remember the moment I reached her bedroom, and that's when the building shakes. The windows shatter, and my mom, dad, younger brothers, and I all collapse to the floor. My hands move automatically to my ears, expecting a bang, but the only thing I hear is a deafening silence. As pressure thrusts into my ears, my blood rushes to my head, and I squeeze my eyes, but both open and closed, the only thing I see is black. It feels like forever until the shaking stops, but it wasn't over. With a piercing screech, I run to the balcony. I watch as a military jet drops a bomb on the university right across the street from my house, signaling an end to my hopes and dreams of researching there. But before I was able to comprehend what had happened, I was on the floor again on my back, looking up into a white cloud of dust. This cloud of dust, of confusion, displacement, inability to belong, followed me everywhere, even when I seeked refuge here in the United States. It only cleared up on the fateful day I discovered the sinister reason behind why I had to seek refuge here. I was working with a lab on a research project about the sea level rise in the Gulf of Maine, and I remember searching up theoretical scenarios of what could happen if we don't address climate change now. But I was struck with a real-life example, an example that hit home. Before the Syrian revolution, Syria faced a severe drought for 3 years that exceeded all scientific predictions. Crops died, Syria's economy suffered, farmers migrated into overpopulated cities, disrupting social hierarchies and heightening political and economic tensions. Tensions that finally snapped. It wasn't until several years after fleeing Syria that I learned that one of the factors that caused the instability in Syria was climate change. And I wondered to myself, where were the signs? A memory sticks out to me. I was walking down the souks of Aleppo with my dad. I looked at a cherry and I pointed, "Dad, can we get this?" He shook his head. The price was too high. Cherries were a daily treat in Syria. They were in almost every dish. And now they were a luxury slowly disappearing from our fridge and our markets. And I bring myself back to where I live now, and I wonder how neatly this fits with the indicators, same repeating stories in the news today. The extreme heat waves in the Middle East, the horrors of the Syrian civil war repeating themselves again in Yemen. Even here around me, I can't seem to escape the effects of climate change. My home city of Revere is one of the most vulnerable communities to sea level rise in the Gulf of Maine, which is the fastest location for sea level rise in the world. A few years ago, I saw students that go to my school evacuating their houses in the winter to avoid floods. This winter, I will be one of those students. In the next 25 years, 1,100 houses in Revere will face flooding every other week. And by 2045, Revere would have lost $535 million worth of homes. Just a quick fact, Revere is right behind Boston as having to lose the most to climate change and sea level rise specifically. Revere is only one of several frontline communities. You have Quincy, you have Boston right here. In Boston, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, sea level is predicted to rise nearly 16 inches by 2050. Even if we do take action, immediate action to combat climate change now, the global sea level would still rise by at least a foot by 2100. Even if we take action now. And we know from the United Nations Climate Report that the world has already warmed roughly 1.1 degrees Celsius since the 19th century, approaching the 1.5 degree level which the Paris Climate Agreement seeks to stop at. Let that sink in. We also know that the window to address the adverse effects of climate change is narrowing very drastically. This means the suffering of frontline communities like Revere, who are already experiencing the consequences of climate change, will only be exacerbated. And what are our representatives doing? Sitting down as our communities are drowning, figuratively and literally. We demand that our lives be seen as equally valuable. Yes. Why is the lives of people in Revere not equally valuable? Yes. And the sad thing about this is that we have the solutions. There are climate policy bills in the Massachusetts State House right here, right now, sitting in desks not being passed. Here's examples. There's the IPCC 2030 bill that Sunrise Boston, a youth climate organization, wrote, which aims to reduce economy-wide climate pollution by at least 60% by 2030, to achieve zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. These are not even ambitious, unheard of goals. They're the bare minimum if we really do care about relieving the suffering of frontline communities. And it fits within the Massachusetts Renewable Portfolio Standards. We're on the same level, except that some of us want to take more action than others do. There's the Green Future Now Corporate Polluter Fee, which is H3292. Come to me, I can give you all the names of these bills. Please talk to your representatives about them. But anyways, the Green Future Now Corporate Polluter Fee aims to make the polluters who are harming our communities pay by taxing these corporations. It also redistributes the funds collected from that tax to fund green infrastructure and support low-income individuals who may not directly benefit from that green infrastructure. This is especially important for places like Revere, where we have an incinerator that has been killing us through climate change, through exacerbating climate change, and killing us directly by literally just all that fumes that we're taking in every day. So this is important if you care about frontline communities. The goal of most of these bills is to outline and implement action to the goals that the state of Massachusetts itself already promised to achieve. They're just not doing anything about it. They say we want to do this. They didn't do anything. We're outlining the actions. We have bills on the table. But unlike the current legislative body, we don't have the privilege to sit down and wait. Our lives and our communities are on the line. I remember how hopeless I felt that day laying on the floor after the university in Syria was bombed. And I wouldn't wish those feelings of hopelessness and later years of displacement upon anybody. So please, the least that you can do today is reach out to your representatives and demand they co-sponsor and pass these bills. Why is it so hard?
Thank you again, Danya. So unfortunately, our next speaker, Awa, could not be here in person, but we are going to try to get her on the phone. We'll see how that goes. Awa is a youth climate justice activist who has seen firsthand how the climate crisis can affect other countries such as their home country of Cameroon. Awa currently works with Our Climate, Massachusetts Youth for Climate Justice, and the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition. We are so excited to hopefully have them on today. Give them a round of applause.
Today, we stand on a square, the space on this day rallying for the climate front lines. What does rallying for the climate front lines mean? It means rejecting the generational denial that wraps the course of Blackness and Indigenous people. It means recognizing that we stand without the threat of violence from the police, where in June 2020, protesters fighting for Black lives were brutalized, arrested, and herded like subhumans. This is important to make these ties amongst violence and the lack of it, and the purpose of actions that are not threatened by them. The them that is the police state that settles on these stolen lands, which threatens those most at risk. And that is the pretense of today. Those at risk, who are descendants of those colonized and enslaved, and who feel the prolonged consequences that is white America's history in this country. Climate justice is simply an extension to the overdue justice this country must give to those it has wronged, those it has stolen and denied. What does it mean for Black people to occupy space in order to demand safety, demand protection, demand until our bones and our foundations grow weak, until our lungs and our trees collapse, until our bodies fail in the heat or under a policeman's gaze, until all the life we are fighting for escapes us, to demand until the end. I think often of that. And what does it mean that many people in this crowd could not be found at BML protests, will not fight for my liberation, and have not yet built true bonds with my people? We must understand that the climate crisis in the United States started with indigenous genocide and enslaved Africans. I ask that this movement strive past the weight of whiteness that keeps us strained, locked in worlds of handcuffs, chains, and bars, walking miles and miles on streets, highways, cities, and countries, echoing demands that fall to empty white ears. The truth is white America was formed in opposition to life and liberty, made us build the spaces we are kept out of, all grown out of foundations of capitalism, out of the drainage of Black and brown bodies. And so white America, so intent in its opposition, created an illusion of protection by jailing and imprisoning Black people across the country. Because white America sees safety and protection as locking us up, making Black people its ultimate price for the life and liberty it boasts to have created, it boasts to have fought for. Today we occupy, we resist, and we reshape all institutions to our time to listen to our cries, our demands, because we must fight against the largest historical robbery of land and people that is the United States. See, Black people's existence is resistance to the celebration of violence that is this country, this false claim to independence that we are forced to digest. But existing as an everyday resistance is best put in the world of James Baldwin. To be Black and conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. Rage that swallows your mind and body whole, that tortures all hope and trust in every interaction, every misfortune, every conflict is a simple generational experience of being robbed clean. Days like this remind me that the demand for justice is crumbs, because in truth, what could make up for the rage and for the anger and the sadness and the harm and all the bloody violence that paints the heritage of this country's history? Because Black and Indigenous people deserve the justice and accountability that we all know this country will never provide us. Justice is a world in which we are free by any means necessary, a world without police, prisons, detention centers, military, and every other armor of whiteness that shelters the people in power and fossil fuel infrastructure that poisons us. A world without the climate crisis, which disproportionately impacts BIPOC communities and burdens them with the ecological consequences of capitalism. That a Black fuel or into areas of higher emissions, for mobility for fossil fuel infrastructure, redlining, the environment and the indigenous Black that are founded on and Black liberation. So we must fight for every Black person, every indigenous person, with safety, security, and protection until we are all safe. Climate justice cannot be achieved. Today, I stand with my fellow members of the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition and the larger climate movement to demand an end to this rage, an end to the rage of standing on stolen land that has been abused and exploited, and to instead work towards visions of reparations, of freedom and liberation, an end to the climate catastrophe for which we have made specific policy demands, and I hope legislators are listening this time. Because today, I walk away from this 400-year limbo of rage. Black bodies should not be driven by rage. We deserve more. We deserve worlds where we don't have to occupy places to make space for ourselves, because all places are spaces for us already. And so I leave you with this. Let liberation and the beauty of a free world drive you to fight. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I can't hear you guys. Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. All right, I'd like to start off by thanking you for being here today. I'm so sorry I couldn't be here in person. Right now, we are standing in the gap, leading in this great fight we call justice. During 2020 and 2021, Justice Climate organized supporters, activists, leaders in our community mobilized to support the bills and policies that would create change in this country. But sadly, there are people who don't want that change. We must fight back and pass this bill. I'm calling on the President and Congress to look within their hearts and ask themselves, what is right for the country in order for the future generations to succeed and live? Global climate change presents one of our gravest threats in our planet's health, and to America's economy, national security, and to our public health, especially here in Boston. Now we are calling on Congress to take bold action. We are talking about lives, human beings. Our lives are at stake as we live and breathe. I want to thank Senator Ed Markey and the tremendous co-sponsors of this Green New Deal, also in partnership with Senator Warren, Ayanna Pressley, Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez, and many others. It's time to lead with bold and actionable policies. Let's call our representatives and senators to support this bill so the president can get this bill on his desk. We are watching, and it's your move now. Do it for our future, because here, I have laid it out on the table. All the electeds here, you've been put on notice. You have been put on notice, because actions speak louder than the words, and we should have people closest to the pain, closest to power. Let's move forward and push for this global bill that can change the world. Thank you.